Hey all, back in the Commonwealth cabin today. We've got a special episode, a couple of special guests, experts who have taught me a ton about t-shirts. I get tons of questions about t-shirts. I have found and sold some pretty cool t-shirts, nothing compared to these guys. We've got a story in here from Chernock about a $2,000 t-shirt that he sold. We're going to talk about specific things to look for when you're out there hunting vintage t-shirts. But we've got two experts in here. We've got Tim from Over the Years, and we've got Chernock's Connection over here as well. And both of them can be seen on the Reseller Information Network. These two guys are incredible resources across the board, but they know a ton about t-shirts, and we're going to learn a little bit today. All right, y'all, one of the most often questions I get is something simple. When I'm out there looking at t-shirts and I'm always pulling up the bottom or the sleeve and they're like, what are you looking for out there? So single stitch t-shirt versus double stitch, what is it and does it really matter, essentially is the question. What do you got?
Well, the single stitch is basically the first identifier of a vintage tee. Now, you do have some modern stuff that are starting to do single stitches, but
you have people starting to do single stitches
yeah,
now?
Polo
Really?
Ralph Lauren does single stitch on some of their stuff.
I did not know that.
Once you know vintage, you kind of know like what you're picking up. Like it's not gonna be like
feel it.
You feel it, you touch it. We look at this every day, so you kind of know. Yeah, single stitch. You know, I've got single stitch right here.
Yep. And
okay.
So you see that
it's one stitch, one line of stitching. And then on the bottom too, on the bottom as well.
One line. Now, as opposed to, I'm going to show you mine here. I don't know if you can tell on a black shirt.
Yeah, so it's got this one and that one. It gives it like a bubble effect.
Right, and you can see it on the sleeve and here, and sometimes they're different, right? The sleeve will be different than the bottom or vice versa.
Most of the time you'll see, you know, if it's different, you'll see the single on the sleeve, and then they'll have a double on here because it's more your seam is, you know, like rubbing more on your pants, so it can come undone. And so it'll basically, if you have single stitch it and it comes undone, it kind of like loops up,
frays up,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm gonna show you. It doesn't mean that it's not necessarily vintage. Of course, vintage is 20 years. You guys in agreement, by the way, with that? Yes. For the most part, he had to think about it there for a second. There's a little debate. So you know, 20 years or older. So as we get close, you know, as we age here, as these years go by, vintage is going to be tons of double stitch because that's what it's made of. So that'll be a different little earmark. So you've got a vintage shirt over here.
This is a 1996 tee right here.
And it's double stitch.
Mine is double stitch.
Right. So it's not the only thing. So one more question about that. How much does that matter in the value of a particular item? Is it really a big important thing? Does it just depend? Because they might even make some identical shirts, some single, some double, maybe. But is it a big deal?
To some people it is, and some people it's not. Around that 1994, 1994 is when they started converting to a double stitch. Now you'll see things. I've seen 1999 single stitch. You know, so it's you got to understand it's back in the day. A lot of these shirts were sold. You know, at concerts or at a Harley dealership or even Kmart.
Yeah.
And Walmart. A lot of people don't know those big NASCAR all over print tees. Yeah. They sold those at Kmart by the truckloads. So it's one of those things where, you know, I like it because it's an identifier that tells me right off the bat, hey, you're looking at something vintage right now.
Gotcha. All right, so we're going to shift over here to Tim really quick. We're going to look at tags on some of these t-shirts. Because I don't know a ton, y'all, but I have learned enough to be able to pick a few things out. But I want you to talk a little bit about different tags, what they mean, and what's significant about them.
So first things first, as far as tags go, one of the things that you're going to look for, like we talked about with the single stitch, double stitch, made in the USA is obviously going to be a sort of a identifying factor such as the single stitch. The big difference is going to be, and I think the liquid blue is probably one of the best examples, because a lot of times right now you may see people who are not too familiar with vintage find a Grateful Dead shirt that might have a date on it, but the tag is what we call a print-on tag.
Okay, which means, so I bought one of those the other day. You saw it. I saw it over there and I picked it up. I'm like a little depressed, right? Because they basically do this on the inside of the shirt as opposed to having
so you
a
have
tag.
the print on tag with a retro sort of design. So with here liquid blue, you actually see the tag. So that's one of the biggest things. So as soon as you see a print on tag, you already know that it's going to be not vintage.
Right.
Now, as far as some of the rest of the tags go, what's also really cool about tags is you can kind of look at the Hanes tag right here. The type of tag that you have will also help you date the actual shirt. So these are early Hanes tags right here. And then with the Harley Davidson, he's going to get in on that one right here. That right there is the 3D emblem tag. So it's different than some of the newer Harley tags. That's going to be the most valuable, you'd say, most valuable Harley Davidson tag.
Kind of.
3D emblem. Except for one.
Except for one. Which we're going to get to at the end of the video. You got to hang around. We got 6 topics. This is topic 2. And then we're going to tell you about this crazy story.
So that's pretty much with the tags. You're just going to be able to do some dating.
Right, because there's so many Fruit of the Loom tags, right? And you told me yesterday the one with the American flag and USA
That's my favorite.
it's his favorite. And you can, now these guys are pretty good, so you can put it pretty close to it. You can get close to the years, and they're not just one specific year. Sometimes they're multiples. And you have that stuff in your head, maybe not exact, but enough to know. Or somebody might like me might have to look it up, but you can you've looked at tags long enough your whole life that you know that Hanes hadn't done that tag for a long time, right?
I mean, this one right here too. That's a pretty cool
right?
tag.
Yeah, exactly.
Just by the colorways of the tag too. There's on the newer tags, you're gonna see a lot more color. You'll see some of these retros or black and white tags a lot of times on some of the older shirts. But made in the USA is going to be like your basic entry level to starting to understand tags. But I think the best part about the tags is being able to date the shirts.
Right, and let me tell you, and I have people all the time. What do you care what the tag looks like? Are you buying the tag or whatever? You're not. All it is it's showing the age. It's a marker, and you literally can pinpoint it to an exact year or an exact. Of course, we know that's 1996, right?
No, I'm interested. I don't even know what tag is on here.
Let me look.
What tag is on there?
All right, Miro Classics, made in Mexico.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right, very good. Thanks. All right, y'all. Topic number 3 here is what are the trends and what is the content of the shirt? What's on the shirt? So even if obviously if you find a vintage Michael Jordan or something like that, you've got the old Laker shirts or whatever it is. Because it's got a date, like Tim's shirt, it's 1996, Notre Dame versus FSU. You've got the content spelled out for you. But there are so many shirts out there that there are collectors for, and there are trends constantly going up, constantly going down in pop culture. And we're going to have Chernock talk about some of those trends and some of the things you might look for, irregardless of the tag. I was telling him about a motocross shirt that I found that had no defining anything on it, nothing particular about a particular person or a date or an event. It was just very generic, and it had no tag of any significance. It was an older one. Turned out it was a Kmart shirt, and I sold it for $80. So we're going to talk to Chernock about things to look for. All right, let's talk about content, what's on some of these shirts. He's got a huge wide variety here. This is Howdy Doody, right? This is probably not made by Liquid Blue, right? So it's not necessarily the value in the tag right there, but it's got content that people collect, the content of itself. They might not just be a t-shirt collector, and maybe some of the trends, and some of the obvious ones are always, I've got this is not a vintage shirt, but bands and stuff like that. But what are some of the things to look for?
The first thing I look for is just what is there a crate? Is there something graphic? Does it pop when I'm going through the racks? Do I stop and go whoa? Because every time I go whoa, that's a chance that it could be a awesome shirt. Because I'll tell you what, you can find single stitch screen stars or whatever old Hanes, and if it says Northbrook Middle School. It's kind of like
that's a great point.
So
I know you'd probably pick up that shirt anyway.
Yeah. but if it stops you in your tracks, you go, wait, that looks interesting. Then you can do a little more investigation. Okay, because what I do is we're popping through so fast. I'm looking for just loud, in your face, and that's what a lot of the styles right now are. That just loud, in your face. You think about the NASCAR tees, the big, the more print on the t-shirt. I always feel the more print on the t-shirt makes the value go more up. So, something like this, like this is what I'm talking about. big,
Grateful
like
Dead, yeah.
tie-dye, big print. Grateful Dead.
People want to be seen, right? It used to be, and it still is brand names to some degree, but the new style is, everybody used to wear the, so everybody could see the brand. But just simply wearing a shirt that makes you stand out like that
Yes.
is something that people are looking for.
Or like the Cat in the Hats, we sold on Whatnot the other night.
There you go.
That's a
exactly
big
right.
shirt. That's just,
Right.
that's in your face, like, cool graphics. This is from 1982. Right. This has got
Right.
Coca-Cola, Sebring, Camel,
yeah.
Everything on it, front and back. It's got a ringer tee and single stitch on the bottom.
Would you say color, like for instance, I'm not a Charlotte Hornets fan, but you want to talk about something that screams, a certain era because of those colors.
Purple,
That's a
teal,
big deal.
yeah. Those are
the Ducks,
the Ducks, also Lakers colorway. Something that's just like a little more like, boom, out there,
Right.
Here's another thing. Rap tees, okay? We got the Up in Smoke 2000 tour. Now this is vintage. Now remember, people, 2003 is now technically vintage. I know that's a hard thing for people to be like, wait, what? But yeah, 2003 is technically vintage. This is probably one of the, this shirt is expensive. Yeah. So, but yeah,
Set that one off to the side. I want to bring that one back for a different topic.
Wrap tees, your Harley stuff still does well. We show the 3D emblem, beautiful graphics. Also, too, with Harley tees as well, a lot of people want this faded, that faded black. This is the beautiful faded black right there. Hopefully your camera can pick it up.
Well, as opposed, this is much more black. This is faded. That's faded.
Wrestling tees do well. Anime tees right now. Vintage anime is probably the one that's surging the most. Okay. You find a 90s Dragon Ball Z or a 90s Ghost in the Shell or Akira shirt. I've seen those go sky high. So right now, everyone's looking for vintage anime. So it's one of those things where there's a whole broad spectrum of vintage t-shirts what you should be looking for. Again, get on Instagram, type in vintage, t-shirt, and just
see what's out there.
People, like, you can learn. You can just see, or you can go on eBay. Vintage t-shirt, high to low. And just study and go.
That's a great way to do it.
Got it.
Awesome.
And just send it in your brain and go. Perfect. Again, looking for that crazy graphic, crazy colors, bigger print. That's what's selling right now.
All right, y'all, have another couple of topics, and this one's interesting. My dad sometimes goes out picking with me, and I've picked up, in the last 2 years, I've found 4 or 5 pretty big lots, mostly NASCAR. It was a video, Fire on the Wire or something you can go check out, but we found some pretty good NASCAR shirts. Some of them in the hundreds of dollars, and I'll pick them up. And then my dad went to a sale down the road without me because I was watching Turner's baseball game, and he sent me a message and clicked some pictures of these shirts that he bought for $1, and I was super excited. And then 5 minutes later, I saw a message. He's like, they had a few more, but I left them there because there was a stain in them or there was a hole in them. And I said, go back and get them for me, please. And those turned out to be better than the ones that were in great condition for a couple of reasons. So we're going to talk about condition. He's going to show you a few things and show you what I used to do back in the day. Same thing with hats, is I'd leave stuff behind, but you shouldn't always leave it behind. But there are a couple times where condition might make a difference. All right, we got Tim here again. So talk about condition. I told him to set this one aside because it's got a few issues. Now, he's the master and he'll get stuff out of everything, but you can't get a hole out of it, right? And there was a hole in this. So if you see a shirt like this with a hole in it and you leave it behind, these guys are gonna be turning over, man. They're gonna be not happy.
Yeah.
Not
so
happy.
Once again, this is very much so about the actual shirt versus the condition. So if you find a shirt that you say maybe in your mind you value at, let's say $20, right? But there is holes here. It might not necessarily be worth picking up, obviously. It depends on the cost of the shirt. Right. But a shirt like this or a shirt like this where it's a 3D emblem tag, like people are going to wear that shirt. They like that sort of, like it, right? They like that sort of vintage vibe. So a couple of holes here. Obviously, you just want to be, transparent about the holes. Shirts are going to have pinholes. A lot of times, even if you get it from the thrift store, you might have a pinhole in the back collar from where the tag is. Same thing with stains. If you find a shirt that is just just not easily obtainable, and there's a stain in it, you know, somebody who's a professional, you know, maybe somebody who has a shop might buy that shirt, and you know they have techniques in which that they might use to get that stain out. So you don't necessarily have to pick up the shirt and be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do to get this out? Because if you're not a professional, you might ruin the shirt more so. So, I mean, I've sold, obviously, you know, some Grateful Dead shirts and a couple of other band tees where I just left it up to the buyer to decide what to do. So, the Cernock already talked about some of the vintage fade. I mean, I even said vintage fade, but the faded black is like a style code almost. Now you have some sort of like cracking in the graphics. Yeah. I mean, to me, it adds character. It shows that it's vintage. Obviously, you're going to get super excited if you find a brand new vintage shirt. But some people who are wearing their vintage, like Cernock does, like I do, this kind of adds character to it. And it shows to the naked eye that your shirt is
it's not
vintage.
Collected and whatever. People that actually wear their stuff, they don't mind buying something like this. If somebody's putting it in their vault to store away, that's not necessarily, they would want something, the best they could find. But I do want to talk about one other thing, because then I sent you these pictures, because Mike out there hooked us up and we made a purchase of some Jurassic Park new dead stock, but they were dry rotted. Okay, now that was such an iconic, it still had the stickers on it. I mean, it was beautiful. So they still went for, anywhere between $30 and like $100, because they were perfect, but they were dry rotted. So you want to talk about dry rot a little bit, and maybe black versus white shirts and stuff like that?
Basically, the dry rot's going to be, you're not going to find dry rot on the white tees.
Not at all?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
So let's answer the question: what is dry rot?
Okay.
Because a lot of people may not know what a dry rot is. You can take a shirt that's dry rot, and usually it's in the the cuff, and you can just pull it apart. It'll just disintegrate because the acid in the black ink that they used just tore down the material.
So I sold I think it was a Harley shirt, and it was a crazy good one. For me, this is like 10, 12 years ago, and I sold one. I had no idea what dry rot was, right? And I sold it for good money, and they sent it back to me. I'm like, what is this? And that's the first I had ever heard of it. I would have never known to pull them. You pulled a shirt out yesterday in a place that you were almost certain it was dry rot, and it wasn't. Yeah. I was in there with you.
Because most of the times you'll see it if these have been washed. Okay, so like, most of the time, I'd say 99% of the time, if you find them and it's like brand new, that's when you're gonna, never been worn, never been washed, that's when you're gonna be a little bit cautious. And when Cernock pointed out too about the sleeves, you want to be careful, right? You don't want to take, if it's a absolute banger, you don't want to just take it like this. Because
Hulk Hogan style.
Then you could potentially ruin a piece which could have potentially been sold and displayed. Yeah. A wall piece. That's
a wall hanger.
Wall hanger. Right. So that's what dry rot's going to be. But all in all, condition it has a lot to do with the actual shirt. Okay. If it is a shirt that sells for X amount of money or is going to be very rare, don't worry about the condition. Just pick it up. Right. It's comparable to glass. Some people say, "Oh, well, it's chipped, right?" But if it's a piece that there's super rare and it's a $2,000 piece, if there's a little chip on it, you still buy it. Yeah. So it's very similar to that.
Okay. All right, y'all. We've got one more topic here, and then we're gonna talk about Cernock's crazy find that I just can't believe. It's one of the best sales I've ever heard of. Let's talk about style a little bit and terminology, maybe things that you could put in keywords if you're a seller when you're looking for shirts. So let's talk, and I'm no expert in this, and I've learned a lot from y'all, but I have found, shirts before, and I wouldn't know what to call them, and I didn't title them correctly, and they're not going to be as searched, right? And so I'm just going to start you off by talking about a wraparound, which is something I'd never heard of till probably 6 or 7 years ago. That when I see it now, I know how to title it. So talk about styles and maybe some terminology.
So there's a lot of different styles of your shirts. But yeah, like you said, a wraparound is a big graphic that goes all the way around, like maybe on one side or may go all the way around a shirt.
And even sometimes over the sleeve, into the back.
Over the sleeve. There's a lot of different ways that they do that. It's cut and sew, it's sublimating, it's all kinds of stuff. But the different styles, AOP. So AOP means all over print.
All over print.
Okay, you'll see that a lot in a lot of listings. You know, people use vintage or VTG. I learned that you can interchange those. So vintage and VTG. You know, if you don't have enough,
Save some letters.
Save
He
you
uses
some letters.
every letter he's got in his.
Yeah,
list,
80
so.
characters. Let's go, baby. So yeah, you have different styles. One of the big styles right now is what is called the wrap tee.
Wrap tee.
Okay, the wrap tee. And, you know, you may think like, you know, this is a wrap tee. You know, like this is a wrap
Yes.
tee. Okay. But I'm going to show you another wrap tee that isn't a wrap tee. This is what they call a wrap tee as well.
Okay.
Okay. This kind of stylized big letters. You know, you might see the big diamond letters, you know, the background with the, you know, and just different things, you know, and this one's censored for your viewers and everything like that. So it's like different, you know, this style right here, just kind of like look at that and then type into eBay vintage wrap tee and see what, you know, see what you're looking for. That is super hot right now in vintage t-shirts as well. 3D Emblem, you know, their styles are a lot. I will tell you the style of 3D Emblem, what to look for, the pigs. If you see the 1984, 1985, 1986 pigs, I mean, that's an instant
I
pickup.
accidentally came across that like 5 years ago. Like I was picking up Harley tees because I pick up Harley tees, and then when I got home, I realized that they were $1 a piece, right? So you just start snatching. When I got home, I realized, and they had pigs on them. I had a couple eagles, but that they were 3D emblems. So I was like, holy moly, I actually found something good.
Right now, tie-dye.
Yeah.
Summer's coming up. Man,
Getting hotter and
tie-dye has... this is probably like the third or fourth year. Tie-dye has been on a huge spike. So if you find vintage tie-dye, pick it up.
I used to be a high school history teacher. I say it all the time, but it was an automatic, it was a helper to me because you just simply looked at what those kids were wearing and I knew what to look for, right? Because I don't have any style. Are you kidding me? You know, I'm wearing this stuff all, well, you know, hey, I got holes in my jeans like Tim did yesterday.
Also, another thing that people really kind of overlook too, but there's a good market for it, culture tees and religious, vintage religious tees as well.
And I've seen like the old, like the Howling Wolf or the stuff like that has a little value, which surprised me for a while.
Yeah, the Howling Wolves, the Lightning Bolts,
Southwestern vibes.
Southwestern vibes.
True,
Those do very well. And then, like we said earlier, the anime.
Yeah.
The big anime, all over crazy colors, graphics that jump out at you. You know, that's what people are wearing.
Use those in the titles. Use that all around or wrap around or whatever.
All AOP. You could AOP all over print.
All over print.
If you see that, you know, sometimes I'll spell it out and I'll put AOP in there just because you have vintage people that are just type in vintage AOP,
right? And
they have an alert set up. Anything that comes in there,
and
boom, boom, boom.
Totally, this is off. But you know, obviously, if you find a great shirt, if it's a size small, you know, it's not the end of the world. But you know, obviously today, I think you know we're a little bigger than they were 50 years ago, and the size differences make a big difference. So when you're listing a shirt or whatever, make sure you're putting measurements or
absolutely measurements because your vintage larges are now vintage smalls almost. Yeah. And the one thing I get all the time, you know, Whatnot kind of set this all off. When you're doing vintage, it's hard to find 2XL and 3XL. They just don't exist. Right. You know, you would have vintage show. I would have vintage shows. Show me all your 3XLs. They didn't exist. You would have small, medium, large, extra large, and that was about it.
Except for on CommonwealthPicker.com, size 5XL, 4XL, and 3XL. There you go.
This is a perfect example. This.
Look at that.
Okay, this is a 1970s Eagles Hotel California concert bootleg shirt, like a parking lot bootleg shirt. This is a size medium. It's a size medium. Okay,
that's good.
You see that? That's a medium.
All right.
All right.
Perfect for a woman. For a girl, you know, those small sizes can be marketed towards women. It gives them an opportunity to find vintage
Bubba's girlfriend will wear that.
Yeah.
$200? Is that what you try? How much is that? I got to give her a Christmas gift this year. She doesn't know who the Eagles are.
Show them the ringer tee too. Before
ringer tee. That's a good point because those ringer tees can be vintage ringer tees.
Vintage ringer tees right here
can be worth.
This is 1960s Howdy Doody.
Wow.
NBC, right there. We've got the single strip, you know, single stitch and the you know, the
so
ringer.
You put ringer in the title.
Yeah, ringer T right there. That one, and I think we had the boxing one. Look at that one. I know,
cool.
I know, Kevin, you like this one right here.
I
But
love
the
that
Reno
shirt.
Rumble.
yeah, so ringer T.
And they have old wrestling ones. Roddy used to wear a ringer tee and stuff
and
like that.
these are not as in style as I wish they would get. But hey,
Hey,
maybe,
you never know next year.
maybe one
Next
day.
year.
So that's why I pick up everything. That's why we pick up everything.
All right, thank y'all for your information, but I got to hear this story here. But I got to tell my story first. All right, y'all, I have found a few awesome shirts in my time. It doesn't compare to what these guys find, but I got to tell a story real quick. We're at the 127 sale, and you've heard me talk about the Richard Petty. It's not really technically a T-shirt, but, you know, I don't have anything compares to this story. But I just want to show you how knowledgeable these guys were, because I was doing research on something. It would have taken me a month of Sundays to figure it out, and Tim here helped me out in just a few hours. And there is big money to be had out there. I sold a Richard Petty. It's actually a pit crew shirt from the 1975 or 6, I think we came up with, maybe 77. And I found it for a quarter, sold it for $700, and he helped me do the research on it. And I probably would have put that thing out there for $400 to $500, except for we got the specific research and knowing exactly what you have and being able to describe it. We even found the gentleman who was wearing the shirt. We found a picture of the guy. Barry Dotson is his name. It was his shirt. We were able to put that in the listing. We listed it for $700 and it sold within a day. Probably still could have listed it for more and probably got $800 or $900, and it sold pretty darn quick. So if you know what you're doing, you can make some money. But if you don't know what you're doing and you have something you think might be valuable, go check them out. Reseller Information Network. There's Facebook groups. You can probably contact one of them on Instagram. He's got a few. You want to give your Instagrams?
Over the years, eBay. Over the years, collecting. And over the years, sports.
There you go. You got it all on Chernok's Connection. But I've got to have him tell this story. And I see y'all have a gift for me here, and I'm already getting excited about this. This is crazy. You sent a picture. I saw a picture somewhere. I don't know if Eric sent it to me. Somebody did. Of this shirt a few months back. And I'm like, what is this? And he sold it the other day. I wanted him to tell the story.
All right, make a long story short, which I can't do. But so I'm at my honey hole. I'm just, you know, I'm buying stuff. And I always watch when because they hang shirts literally like right in front of you. They'll hang shirts. And then they have this big black bin. They call it the refuse bin.
Oh, no.
Where they, you know, chunk stuff in there to get bundled up and send it out of the country.
Can I stop you? Because they didn't hear the lesson on not throwing away junky old shirts, and some of them are worth money, and so they think, oh, it's junk, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So I see a flash of a shirt falling into the refuse bin, and I'm like, So I go look, and I'm like, whoa. I pick it up, okay?
And we're going to put a picture, because you can send me a picture. So we're going to film over here and here, and we're going to put this picture up right here. Go ahead.
I pick it up, and I look at it, I'm like, well, I can't say what I'm like, so I out of curiosity, I asked the lady, I said, why did you throw this in the bin? She said, oh, it's dingy. I don't want to sell dingy stuff.
So I
here.
can have it for free?
So so I'm like, well, I'm gonna take this. She's like, okay, whatever. So I get to the counter, and I said, hey, this is in the refuse bin, but I need to pay for this. And they're like, okay, it'll be $1, you know? So I'm like, all right, cool. So in my mind, I'm like, man, I just found like a late, you know, maybe like a late 1960s, you know, or early 70s Harley Davidson shirt, score, win for me. Now, it did have some identification on it, which was just the tag. Okay. So I looked at the tag. I'll send you a picture of the tag too.
So we might be flashing different pictures on the screen.
So I looked at the tag and I'm like, well, I know this tag, but let me go and date it. And there's a lot of, I use a lot of different sites that you can date certain tags. Like you can date Carhartt tags, you can date Hanes tags, Woolrich or whatever. So I brought up the Champion tag. It was on a Champion, what I call a Champion Running Man tag. Okay, the Champion brand that everyone knows, you know, that was at Walmart. They sold it at Walmart. Then now it got popular. Now it's not popular again, but that's the brand Champion. So it's Champion Running Man. And I'm like, let me date this tag just to look at it. So I date it, and I'm like, 1950s. Because it says 1960s. It was a totally different tag. So I'm like, this is 1950s. So I took a look at the graphic, and it was called it said Harley Davidson the Winner, and it had all these trophies with all these different like races, Daytona, Laconia, just it had like 15 different races on it. And so I was like, yo, let's dig in on this. This is something special. If this is 1950s, let's dig in on this. So I started doing all the research about the races. What I came to find out, from 1954 to 1956, Harley Davidson dominated the U.S. like motorcycle racing circuit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, okay. And there's great photos, great information, and I even tracked down the guy that was on like the drawing of the motorcycle. His Joe Lennard, he wore the number 1 during 54 through 56, and they won all those races, and they were on the KR models, which when you looked at the drawing on the the sprint, that's exactly what it was. So from there,
how did you? I'm sorry to interrupt, but how did you figure out a price? Because there's nothing out there, right? There's nothing out there.
Okay, so sometimes with a price, I'm just like, all right. This is what I think it's around, but I'm like, if these 1986 3D emblems are selling for sometimes anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500, I'm like, a 1955 shirt that they scoured the internet for. And here's the thing: if someone sends me another shirt like that, like the exact same shirt, I will send them like a crazy vintage shirt for free. Okay, the first person that does that,
right?
I'm making that case right now. So. The thing about it is, it was so rare. I'm like, well, I sent it out to a few buddies, and they're like, one guy was like, bro, I'll give you $300 for that right now, and I was like, no way.
Yeah.
So I ended up listing it at $4,000. I said, I want to be at, because I was like, I'm going to be at the top, highest shirt. So
ever listed on eBay.
If anybody comes in and just goes highest to lowest Harley Davidson shirt, mine is going to be at the top.
Yeah.
Now. Was I expecting $4,000? No.
But it was a way to get more views on it.
More views, more like, whoa, what is this? More clicks.
I have never thought about before. And I should have probably, matter of fact, I probably did with that Petty shirt. I'm sure, there's probably a lot of old pit crew shirts. But I saw quite a few at 300 or 400, and that's why I decided to put it at 7, because there's nothing like that.
Initial thoughts was, I was thinking, like, this is a $1,500 to $2,000 shirt. Like just kind of everything I've seen, everything I've done. Right. I'm like, this is around that range. So it was listed for let's see, maybe like 2 months, 3 months.
If that, yeah.
A collector out of New York. I'm not gonna give his name, but he has his own like vintage shop down there. Contacted me, and we worked out a deal. Kind of going back and forth. We worked out a deal, and we came up with a $2,000.
Just so people aren't confused, not off of eBay, on eBay.
On eBay, okay. Yeah. We did not go off of eBay.
He didn't come to your house.
But we in the messaging system, we came up with a price that we both agreed on, and I was happy with it. He was happy with it, and we made it happen. Oh. And I called him. I messaged him. I said, "Do you mind me call you, because I want to give you some information about shipping and all this." So I called him. He was like, I'm a big collector, a Harley collector. This is going to be like the pinnacle of my Harley collection. I even have my own shop in Tribeca, New York, and everything. So that was great to talk to him and just kind of give him like a little bit more information about the research I did. So it was kind of like, not only did we just sell a shirt, we gave someone a shirt that's like going to be a centerpiece in their collection.
That's an awesome story, man. Thank y'all for joining us. All right, so these guys are such good pickers. They can find in my own backyard what I haven't been able to find for a year. He brings me these yesterday, which is awesome. We'll have them up for auction, of course. And today, this is what they bring me, y'all. Check this out. My new outfit for the Commonwealth cabin. Look at this.
When you're cooking up something in the lab,
crazy.
You can put on the lab coat right here.
I'll tell you what, I'm gonna keep this. I'm gonna wear it. One day in the future, we'll auction it off for charity, and maybe if I can remember, we'll do something of your choice. This is a super special gift, and I appreciate you guys very much. Y'all, if you get a second, go check them out on Reseller Information Network. Check them out, Chernox Connection, and Over the Years Everything on Instagram. Go check them out. These guys are a wealth of knowledge. I deeply appreciate all the help they've given me over the years, and I hope to see you next time.